You have to have evidence that something is about racism before you cry racism. At least that's the way it used to be.
And tell me if you think this is a preview of things to come, particularly, dare I say, around election in the midterms and beyond.
Yeah, so it's very dystopian to see. It's funny because I used to watch like The Handmaid's Tale, and I can't, right? I never finished, and I can't watch it because it is too close to reality. And so what we're seeing is this militarization, and obviously it started in your state. That was kind of the testing grounds. Going to your state, going to a Black woman mayor's city first. And now we are in yet another Black woman led city and taking over. And to me, it goes again to the level of racism and hate that is constantly spewed out of this administration. Now, they hate for you to call them what they are, but listen, I mean, if it walk like a duck, quack like a duck, then I guess it is a duck. So, like, racism is racism, and you are specifically targeting these Black led areas.
Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Welcome if you're new here. My name is Natalie Beisner. I am a former Democrat. I left the Democrat Party in 2020, which is a story I have told many times over. If you're interested, I'm sure you can find it all over actually. But today I wanted to talk about this Jasmine Crockett interview on the Gavin Newsom podcast. I have a couple other clips in the later in the video, but on this first one, okay. This is a pet peeve of mine, calling everything a handmaid's tale. Democrats have been using this line for at least 2 or 3 years since it became clear that Roe versus Wade was going to fall. And they've been using the sky is falling, it's the end of the world line for at least 10 years since it became clear that Donald Trump was going to win the primary and then win the general in 2016. And it's a little tired. It's a little tired. As someone who was part of it for the first 5 of those 10 years, it's a little bit tired. And somehow, I, as a conservative, as a Christian, as a right leaning person, I was able to survive 4 years of Joe Biden without comparing it to some dystopian novel, without pretending like I'm a handmaid and someone is imprisoning me for my womb. Somehow, as a Republican, I am able to live in one of the bluest cities in the country without acting again like the sky is falling. And I'm not saying that Republicans, right leaning people never act hysterical. That's not what I'm saying. But a lot of Democrats act hysterical. That is part of their MO. It seems like they want to keep us in a perpetual, or keep their voter base in a perpetual outrage cycle, perpetually panicked and fearful and genuinely believing that Donald Trump is Hitler and he wants to imprison you for your womb. That is so out of touch for someone who is ostensibly the leader of the Democrat Party. Maybe for her to be saying that is so crazy. Forgive me, I have a fly flying around here that you just saw. I have a problem with flies every single summer since I moved into this place. And I do everything I can, but it's an issue. And we have a heat wave going on right now. So it's even more of an issue. So forgive me for the fly. But, you know, this is, it does a disservice to our political dialogue because it's no longer about us disagreeing on the issues, us disagreeing about how best to make America the greatest it can be. It is now about you pretending like you are a handmaid, again, being imprisoned for your uterus. That does not serve our political conversation very well. Now, she references California being militarized when Donald Trump federalized the National Guard. And that's another thing. When we're talking about fear mongering, they fear mongered the hell out of that, and nothing happened. National Guard came and went, and nothing happened. And I have a sneaky suspicion it's going to be the same thing with DC. She also references the skin color of the mayor of Los Angeles, where the National Guard was deployed in June, and the mayor of DC, where the National Guard is currently deployed. They both happen to be Black women. However, it has nothing to do with their skin color. If it had to do with their skin color, Donald Trump, I guess, would be sending the National Guard to every single city in America that's run by a Black person. You have to have evidence that something is about racism before you cry racism. At least that's the way it used to be. Anytime something bad happens to a Black person, it's not racism. Anytime something that you don't like happens to a Black person, that's not racism. You have to have evidence that it's motivated by discrimination towards or prejudice against Black people, and you simply don't have that. The reason that Donald Trump is able to do what he's doing with the National Guard in DC for 30 days is because DC is and always has been heavily federalized. In fact, I didn't realize it until doing a little bit of research for this video. It wasn't until 1973, when Nixon signed the Home Rule Act, that DC residents got the opportunity to vote for their local government. But still, even today in DC, the judges and the US Attorney of DC, they're all federally appointed. The city's laws and budgets are subject to congressional approval. And bringing us to our current situation, the National Guard can be deployed and the DC Metropolitan Police can be brought under federal control without local government approval. So this is legal. And it has nothing to do with the skin color of the mayor. It has nothing to do with race. And Jasmine Crockett said in that clip, they hate for you to call them what they are, meaning racist, but if it walks like a duck and quacks like a duck, it's a duck. And to that, I have to say, Jasmine, if they're racist, why do they hate to be called racists? If they're Nazis, why do they hate to be called Nazis? Why aren't they out and proud? I have never heard of someone who's legitimately racist, who's actually a Nazi, who then takes umbrage when you call them racist or Nazi. It makes no sense, but they never actually think about this.
Thought January 6th was a problem and we thought, oh man, that's bad. And, you know, his army then was a bunch of white nationalist races, whether we're talking about the Proud Boys or the neo Nazis or whomever, those guys were the ones that made up his army on that day to try to pull a coup. Now you're talking about a guy that every time he disagrees with something, he uses the power that he has because no one around him is checking him, whether we're talking about those in his administration or whether we're talking about the courts or if we're
Okay, so really quickly on this part, referring to the J6 protesters as his army, as Trump's army, and they're trying to pull a coup. No, 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 that did not happen. That did not happen. Why was his army not armed? Why was his army not armed? If it was a coup, why was the army not armed? And as far as no one around Donald Trump checking him, he had 64 universal injunctions against him in his first administration. Now, you can compare that to 6 under George W. Bush, 12 under Obama, 64 again under President Trump's first term, and then 14 in the first 3 years of Joe Biden. By May of this year, Donald Trump already had 39 injunctions against him in his second term. So I don't want to hear this stuff that no one around him is trying to check him, and again, that the sky is falling, and this is a handmaid's tale, and this is his army. Where is the evidence, Jasmine? You simply don't have it.
for the people of Texas. And so now, because he wants to do everything that he can to kiss the raggedy feet of Donald Trump, this is where we stand to the extent that he is disrespecting Texans over and over and over, whether we're talking about the map or whether we're talking about the threats that were waged against these members and their family members, or whether we're talking about a woman, a Black woman that decided that she wanted to be free in the year of 2025. And basically, she had someone who decided that he wanted to act like she is on a plantation. And so, therefore, she had to sign documents if it was that she was to have some semblance of freedom.
Okay, final thing on this. Of course, everything is about race all the time. Now, Nicole Collier is a Texas Democrat representative who happens to be a Black woman. She is one of over 24 representatives who fled the state in order to prevent a quorum when it came to voting on this redistricting thing. They came back to Texas, and the Republican Speaker, Dustin Burrows, mandated that any Democrat leaving the chamber needed to sign a permission slip agreeing to be shadowed by a Texas Department of Public Safety officer at all times. Nicole Collier refused to sign the permission slip, so she could not leave the house. Now, tell me how that's about her skin color. Tell me about how it's acting like a Black woman's on a plantation and imprisoning her because of her skin color. Tell me how. She was given the opportunity to sign the permission slip. She chose to not do it. And there were two other representatives, at least, who tore up their permission slips and stayed with her overnight. Their names are Jean Wu and Vince Perez. I admit I didn't look into Jean Wu and Vince Perez, but I assume they're not Black people targeted because they're Black. Okay. And on top of that, I believe there are at least 14 other Democrat representatives in the Texas House of Representatives. I mean, Black Democrat representatives in the House of Representatives of Texas. Excuse me. There are 14 Black Democrats who are Texas representatives. Why weren't they imprisoned on the House floor? If it's about you being black, Nicole, why weren't they imprisoned? See, but there's no evidence. There's no evidence of racism. But see, anytime something bad happens to a black person, suddenly it's racism. That's not how racism works. Now, I'll be honest with you guys, there is a question about whether this was legal. Texas government is well within their rights to use DPS to track down absent lawmakers and to bring them back to the Capitol, but it's unclear whether they are currently at the Capitol, whether you are allowed to mandate that they have around the clock escorts. That's something that's going to be decided in the court. Okay. I don't have any dog in this fight, to be honest. I don't like what Texas is doing with gerrymandering. I don't like what California is trying to do with gerrymandering. I don't like political partisan gerrymandering because without it, I would actually have much more representation in California. But be that as it may, that's something that's going to be decided by the courts. But again, where's the racism? You have to have evidence of racism. It cannot just be anytime something that you don't like happens to a black person, it's racism. I really wish that Democrats would get that. This entire interview from Jasmine Crockett was nothing solid, nothing substantial, no data, no evidence, no real discussion of policy. It was all about racism. It was all about skin color. It was all about fear mongering. It was all about Handmaid's Tale and Donald Trump's army and January 6th. And I really can't believe that that's where we're at as someone with someone who may be the future of the Democrat Party. But I didn't see anything there that was solid. And again, it's not about whether Jasmine Crockett agrees with me or I agree with her on everything, but it's about the issues, the policies, things like that. When you're just talking in vague semantics about Handmaid's Tale and racism, it'll do a lot to get people like emotionally invested, but it doesn't really serve our political dialogue. It doesn't serve our country.
Of that, are you concerned about that as well?
I think that there are no limits that ICE will not go. I do feel like this is definitely his personal army.
Yeah, there are no limits to what ICE will do, and this is his personal army. So again, ICE is simply doing their jobs. If you don't like the fact that it is illegal for illegal aliens to be here, then you should change the laws. ICE is doing their job. It is illegal for illegal aliens to be here. ICE is doing their job. Moreover, as of mid-August, around 332,000 individuals have been deported. We're on track for maybe 400,000 by the end of the year. They wanted to do 1 million. So tell me how that is ICE going to any lengths. Tell me how that's ICE being his personal army. The fact that they're under target, that's ICE. That's them not stopping at any. There's no lengths that they won't go to. Okay, then why are we under target? But see, again, this is the kind of language that gets you hyped up, that gets you emotional, that got me emotional when I used to be a Democrat. But it's not actually about the issues. It's not actually about solutions. And last thing I'll say on that, speaking of solutions, what Democrats need to realize is that if you spend years denying that there's a problem, whether it comes with crime or illegal immigration or anything else, and you tell Americans to not believe their lying eyes, then the other side is going to come in with solutions and you're not going to like the solutions. They're not going to be bipartisan solutions because you didn't want to be part of the solution. You kept denying that there was even a problem. So you can't spend years denying that there's even a problem with crime, with illegal immigration, with anything else, and then be mad when Donald Trump or the Republicans come in with a solution because you chose to not be part of the solution. You chose to deny that there was even a problem. You have created this vacuum that then allows Donald Trump to come in and be the hero to a lot of people because you refuse to put the American people first. And again, I'm not saying that Republicans never do that, deny that there's a problem when there is one, but this is something we're seeing over and over and over again lately with Democrats. Again, when it comes to crime, when it comes to illegal immigration, when it came to the response to COVID, Democrats did the exact same thing, and that opened the door for me to leave the Democrat Party. So just something to think about that you can't actually, it's really rich to complain about the solutions when you kept denying that there was even a problem. And as someone who listened to this entire appearance from Jasmine Crockett on the Gavin Newsom podcast, it was just like word vomit garbage about race and racism and keeping you emotionally baited and emotionally invested and emotionally turned up to a level 13. But it was not about any real solutions for you as an American, no matter what your skin color is. Even as a Black American, there were no solutions for you as a Black American. So, just something that I wanted you guys to be aware of, something I wanted you guys to think about. And I will see you guys next time. Please do. My channel was recently demonetized. I'm trying to get it back. Please like, please subscribe, please leave a comment. It's been a hell of a week, and I will leave it at that. But I could really use the like, subscribe, comment, because I'm trying to keep building something here and keeping you guys informed and with the truth, not with emotional bait. So I'll see you guys next time.
Or whether it is how everything unfolded with the Marjorie Taylor Greene scenario and having like Black women executives that are sitting in these rooms and these tables where the micro and sometimes macro aggressions are so real with their colleagues, but feeling like, you know what, if the Congresswoman can stand in her power, I can stand in mine. Now, the advice is not to call anybody a butch body or a big back or nothing, but